Rolling? All right.
We're on.
Okay, we're here a couple minutes early. For those of you who are here already, thanks for tuning in. We got a couple minutes yet, but we always like to get going a little bit early, get going live early, and let us know where you're from. We got the crew here, back and behind the scenes. We got our main man Nick on the camera tonight. We got Justin and Josh here helping with questions. So be sure to fire those. What do you think? Tonight we're going slice.
It's a big one. I think we're going to be able to help a lot of people play better tonight. Make sure you're taking notes. I always tell people have some popcorn, have a drink. You're going to learn more sitting down than sometimes actually hitting balls tonight.
That's very true. That's very true. So let's get us rolling a little bit while we got a few minutes here. For those of you who are already tuning in, let us know where you're from. Justin and Josh over there keeping track of that. We'd like to hear the different places that you're from, and it kind of helps us give a sense of who we're talking to, really.
You bet.
You know, so a couple more minutes here, and then we're gonna get up things running. And also, if you got any questions on slicing, if you do slice a golf ball, which a lot of people, how many people do you think generally, what percentage of golfers slice, do you think?
I would say 75 to 85%, somewhere in there. I know that's kind of a little bit of a range, but what would you say?
It's up there.
It might be more, honestly.
Yeah, I do have to say, and we're going to talk about this here in a minute when we get everybody rolling here. It's my favorite thing to fix.
It's because people struggle so much with it when you help them with it.
Yeah.
You see the smile on their face, and obviously you know they're on to better golf. So I would agree.
Yeah, when you help somebody get a draw for the first time, it's pretty crazy. So, all right, we're back and roll. Where do we got? We got anybody from anywhere out there?
We got Omaha
Ooh.
and Parker, South Dakota.
Oh, nice. All right. We got some Midwest people.
Yeah, back to
They're
it.
tuning in and ready to go. All right, so we're going to go ahead. It is 7 o'clock. We're going to get started. My name is Todd Cole. I'm the Director of Golf for the Sanford Power Golf Academy and also US Golf TV. We want to thank you for tuning in here tonight. One of our favorite topics, we're talking about the slice. So if you slice a golf ball, this next 59 minutes is for you. We're going to take a deep dive into why we slice a golf ball, how we fix it, what are some drills you can do, you name it. And what's going to really help is if you get engaged in this, ask some questions, because that's why we're here. And before we dive into some of that, I got to introduce my main man here, one of my really good friends, great golf coach here from the Sanford Power Golf Academy, Sam Bosser. What do you got for these guys to start here tonight?
It's good to be here again. Yeah, I think tonight, like Todd mentioned, we just mentioned it, probably 75 to 85% of people slice the golf ball, whether it's with your irons, your driver. So these 5 tips tonight, these 5 keys and the drills we give you, I think you really are going to be able to improve and have some fun with it. See the ball turn over for once.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to help golfers with is those golfers who come in and slice a golf ball. Because if you have been a chronic slicer your entire life, when you hit a nice high draw for the first time, it is a thing of beauty. And so that's what we're going to be doing here tonight. We always like to hear about where you're from. For those of you who tune in a little bit early, we always get started a few minutes early. We'd like to know where you're from. We've got Florida, we got Colorado, we got Louisiana, we got Iowa. We got them coming from all over tonight.
Keep them coming.
People who slice live everywhere.
Yep.
Right? All right, so let's dive into this. Now, before I forget, hey, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because we're doing these live videos, we're doing great content all the time. And please do me a favor, share this with your friends. And also be sure to follow us at the Sanford Power Golf Academy. We got people who know a lot about golf, not just Sam and myself. We got a lot of people. We got research people, we've got sports psychologists, physical fitness, physical therapy, you name it. So be sure to follow us on all the social media places, because we're putting out some great stuff there. So we're going to dive right into this. Here's what we're doing tonight. We're going to break this down into a couple of different things. First of all, we're going to talk about what actually causes the slice. If we don't understand what the problem is, what is actually happening at the moment of impact, we can't fix it. So we're going to start with that. Coach Sam's going to take a deep dive into that and really help us understand. We're going to take a concept that many people think is very complicated, and we're going to simplify it for you. All right, then we're going to talk about what are the 5 most common mistakes that we see amateur golfers make when they slice a golf ball. And we're going to break it down into the setup, the takeaway, the transition, the backswing pivot, and also finish.
Yes.
Did I miss anything there?
I think you got them.
I'm doing pretty good so far.
We're on it.
Ripped that off the top of my head. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to finish up with our 5 favorite drills that we use as coaches to help people fix the slice. So tune in, be ready to rock and roll. We got a full plan here tonight. We are going to give you some great stuff that's going to help you play better golf. Coach, let's dive right into it. what is actually happening when people slice?
So most golfers out there, Todd, I mean, we all want to hit the ball straight. The reality is most of us have some sort of curve on the golf ball.
Yeah.
So I think that's first and foremost what's important is understanding expectations. So slice, when we're talking about slice, so if you're thinking about going from your vantage point, the ball is going to be starting right and going more right. So it's kind of curving like this. And a draw, which is the opposite, maybe you've heard of that. A draw is where the ball is starting this way and kind of turning over this way. So you also hear terms such as a fade, and you see a draw or hook. So a fade, what's a fade compared to a slice? What's kind of the difference between the two?
Yeah, good question, because you hear that even on TV, hey, that guy or gal hits a power fade, okay? And so a fade is a ball, I think all golf shots have some form of movement to them. I mean, the hardest shot to hit in golf is a perfectly straight shot. I mean, I don't know if I ever really see it. I mean, I don't think you want to try to hit a perfectly straight shot. It's almost impossible. So you want some little curve in your golf ball. So a fade would be a ball, as Coach Sam was saying, that starts straight for a right-handed golfer, then just dies a little bit to the right. So it's not really, I wouldn't say moving to the right, it's falling to the right.
Yes.
That's how I would define the difference.
So the same thing on the other side, right? So you hear hook and a draw. So a hook is just more severe. It's probably turning it over even more. So once we kind of understand the terms, which is a lot of times kind of the miscommunication between instructors and maybe golfers, amateurs, we have an idea of what that does. Believe it or not, the golf swing, there's a lot of physics involved.
Yeah.
There's math, geometry. So if you like this, you'll eat this up. At the end of the day, there's certain variables that cause the golf ball to do what it does. So when we swing, the golf club is kind of on the circular arc working around our body. So we're standing up, but this golf swing is working around us. So when you think of that, there's a couple things that impact where the ball goes. One is right here is the club face, Todd. So club face direction, so there's club face at address, there's club face dynamically through the swing and that impact. For the most part, where this face is at impact is going to determine the initial direction of the golf ball. So initial direction, anywhere it starts, golf ball can start straight, it can open up, and so it could go right, it could close and go left. So that would be the first variable that we're going to talk about.
Club face.
Club face, and we're going to reference this later in some of our drills and how to actually, make sure that we're solving some of these mistakes with the slice. The other thing that's impacted with this and causes the golf ball to actually curve is kind of the path of your club or swing direction.
Okay.
So I'm going to actually turn this way, Todd. So
switch spots
our viewers, thank you, our viewers can actually see. So at the moment this club is working around my body, it can go in different directions. Like we talked about, it can actually go kind of right down the middle line if we had kind of an imaginary line. Okay, that would be straight. Most people are working on two different paths. One, with golfers that are usually hitting a lot of draws, are coming more from the inside, so in, and more working out as they're making impact with the golf ball. 90% of people tend to hit kind of this other path, which is out to in, so outside of that imaginary middle line, and then it's working left, and we call that out to in, or there's a lot of terms out there people will call over the top.
Yeah.
Okay, so that mixed with the club face angle kind of dictates where the golf ball goes. So they match up together, and depending on where this face is and that path is going to tell you if you hit a slice. It's not going to lie. The ball doesn't lie. Those are the two things we can look back at.
So we got a couple of things that we're talking about right there. Really good. So we've got the club face, and we've got the direction that the club is swinging. Some people call it path, but for our discussions tonight, it's the direction that the club is swinging. And as Coach Sam said perfectly there, it's about how do those match up at the moment of impact. Not where they're at on your takeaway, not where they're at, on certain parts of your downswing. Where are they at the moment of impact? Now, of course, how you take the club away and your transition, those have big impacts on where the club arrives at impact. We're going to talk about exactly that. But the formula that you want to know is where's the club face pointed, that's where the ball is going to start, and what's the direction that the club is swinging at the moment of impact. So, if they're slicing the golf ball, their direction they're swinging it relative to their club face would be what?
So both things. Usually we see the face. So the face was that first variable. It's open.
Yeah.
And then we have a swing direction that would be out to in or across. And that with the open face and that club path is going to create that peel off or dropping off to the right.
So it's really the combination of the two. And that's what I want you to take away from this is that it's it's not like if my club face is open, I'm guaranteed to slice it. If I swing to the left, I'm guaranteed to slice it. It's the combination of the two. So at the end of the day, we've got to get that club face, if you're a right-handed golfer, we've got to get that club face pointed somewhere to the left of the direction that the club is swinging at that moment of impact. Now, right now, if your head is spinning a little bit, that's okay.
Yes.
Because we're not going to talk about that in-depth science stuff anymore. What we're going to dive into is what can you actually do if you slice the golf ball. So let's go ahead and switch spots.
Yep.
We're going to dive right into some of the setup stuff here. Now, one of the questions, keep these questions coming because we're going to be answering a lot of these tonight. One of the great questions we didn't even talk about, where's Sanford Golf at? Sam, where are we at?
We're in the mecca of the Midwest. We're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is kind of in the southeast part of the state. Got a population close to 200,000 people. Great area to live. Todd, you lived here your whole life, haven't you?
Been here my whole life. Sanford Golf is based here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we're expanding kind of all over right now. We got some real great growth happening, and at Sanford they've got a lot of different things. Obviously, healthcare network, and that's really important right now. Hopefully, you're being safe. You're listening to what the healthcare people are telling us, and you're doing the right things and being safe. That's what's most important. But we're heavily involved in a lot of things, basketball, volleyball, and all types of different things. So we're here to talk about golf, so let's dive right into that. So first thing we're going to talk about are what are some of the mistakes that you might be making in your setup that are causing you to slice a golf ball. So I want to talk about basically just a couple of them. The first one is alignment. All right, so when we're set up here, if I'm going to go ahead and grab a golf ball, a lot of people who slice a golf ball for right-handed golfers is they tend to get aimed too far to the left of the target. Now we see this happen because they hit a couple golf shots, the ball curves off to the right, they're smart people, they're like, okay, that doesn't work, I don't want to be right at the green, so what do they start to do? They start naturally starting to shift their aim to the left of the target. So the first thing you want to look at, okay, is if you're slicing the golf ball is where do you have your body angles aligned? And if you recall a little bit, Sam was talking about the direction that we swing the golf club. Okay, there's a lot of things that play into that. But one of the biggest things is how you align your body. So if I get set up here and I take my feet and they're open, and more importantly, my shoulders are open, okay, and my arms are positioned a certain way, this is going to set me up, all things being relatively equal, to swing the club kind of out and across, which is one of the most common mistakes that golfers make when they slice a golf ball. So the first place you want to look is where's your body aligned. Now the next place that I want you to look is in the position of your arms. Okay, now what I mean by that is that if you slice a golf ball, my guess is you have your right arm, which would be your trail arm for a right-handed golfer, is maybe higher than your left arm. So when you're set in here, like this, your trail arm is higher than your lead arm. Now what happens here is, once again, that can cause us to start swinging the club out and across the golf ball. So what are we going to do to fix that? Well, we're going to take our aim. We're going to aim you a little bit to the right. We got some great drills. We're going to work on this specifically here in just a few minutes, but we're going to aim to the right with my feet, my hips, and my shoulders, and I'm going to make sure that my lead arm is a little bit higher than my right arm. And now I'm set up to hopefully start swinging that golf club a little bit to the right. Now, I got one other thing in your setup I want to give you, and then I'm going to have Coach Sam share a couple things about what does he see in the setup. The last one that I like to look for is how do they have their upper body positioned. And these kind of really all tie together. But if your upper body is positioned where you're leaning towards the target, that also is going to make you more prone to swinging out and across the golf ball. So from your view right there, if I take my upper body, and unfortunately if it's tilted this way, that also is going to cause me to swing across it a little bit. So what you want to feel is you want to get in here, and you want to feel like your upper body's tilted a little bit away from the target. Now, that's a similar tip that we gave the other night. We talked about driver. If you didn't see that the other night, we did a really great conversation about how do you hit your driver and those types of stuff. And we gave that same tip there as well. So those are some of the couple things you're looking to set up. What else am I missing there?
So my question back would be, do you think people are just responding to maybe right away they start hitting the ball and curving it right? Do you think then they're responding with their setup? Or do you think just in general people have some setup issues right away? Can it be one or the other?
I think that's a really good question. It's kind of the chicken and the egg. Like, okay, what is coming first? It's hard to say because if the first few shots they hit are slicing, people are going to start changing their aim. So typically, here's what I think with aim. I think aim is dictated by the curve of the ball. Okay, so like, for example, if you got people who really hit a hook, they start naturally just aiming right at the target because they're hooking the golf ball. And that makes sense to a certain degree. But what you gotta fight is if you slice the golf ball, you have to understand that the more you shift your aim, or what we like to call baseline, left, the more prone you are to slicing it. So when you go to the driving range, you gotta work with that and fight that a little bit. We got some great drills we're gonna talk about here in just a second that kind of help us with that. What else?
I think most golfers are more athletic or trying to figure out the problem, right?
Yeah.
So if they miss it right, they're trying to problem solve the only way the information they have, and usually to them that's how they're trying to actually, this face is really what they're determining is the cause of why they're hitting it right. So the more, like Todd said, they try to close their shoulders down, get that path moving, that's the only way they know to try to straighten it out. In reality, that's actually what's causing the ball to potentially fade more. So
great.
I think, at the end of the day, it's kind of the chicken or the egg, but like Todd said, aim is going to dictate a lot. And so if we can really focus on some of these things coming up with your aim and your club face awareness, I think naturally then the setup stuff becomes a little bit better feeling.
Yeah, let me give you one last tip on the setup, because I think this ties into a lot of it, all right, and that is ball position. If the ball gets too far forward, you're going to be more prone to aiming open to the target or left of the target if you're a right-handed golfer. So that would be the last tip I would give you in your setup to try out, okay? Make sure that the ball is not too far forward. Actually move it back a little bit. So if you're hitting an iron, think of like typically where the logo on your shirt might be, all right? Okay, the ball should be basically off that, or maybe more off the zipper a little bit.
Yeah.
It depends upon the club that you're hitting. But that's what you want to look for. Now, I have to also say that we did some really in-depth stuff with this on a product just a little bit ago called Tour Draw. And I mean, it was like everything to do with the slice. And so we got the team out there. They'll put that link in there if you're interested in really like a super in-depth. I don't know, Nick, how many hours of video is that?
I think it's about 2.5 hours.
Yeah. It's like 2.5 hours. It's got literally tons and tons of drills. It's called Tour Draw. Anyhow, where we're really taking a deep dive into that, and that's been around for a while, and I can tell you, it's helped literally thousands of people quit slicing the golf ball. So, all right, that's the setup. Let's talk about the takeaway. Let's switch spots and have you dive in here, Coach, and talk about that.
Perfect. So I've got a couple alignment sticks here. These are a common tool that you can use when you're practicing. You get them at Home Depot. I don't know what else they call them. What's the actual term? They're yardsticks.
Yardsticks, I don't know.
So one thing that I like to do, we're going to kind of get this set up, and then I'll talk about what the takeaway actually is. So I'm just lining these kind of down. So the takeaway is essentially for the position where you set up at address and you take the club back till it's about parallel with the ground. So you can see the club is here. Now this position, Todd, is really, really important because it sets up the whole golf swing. So I'm a big believer that if you get kind of your setup and your backswing right, the transition and the downswing and everything kind of comes together well. So if not, you're going to have to compensate. There's some really good golfers out there that have some unique takeaways. So I want you to understand that tonight, it's not necessarily the only way to do it. There's certain matchups. That's a key thing to make sure that you have. But these are usually what we see with a lot of slicers. So if we have a good setup, a lot of times when we get set in here with the takeaway, so when the club actually moves away, there's two things. There's the club, and then there's the body. So what I see, and the biggest thing that I see with issues is this golf ball, when it gets taken away, the club wants to kind of work away as the body wants to turn this way. So we become disconnected with the golf club. The best golfers are able to stay connected. So as they turn, their body, the arms are kind of coming with them and working kind of in this circular motion. Now some golfers have more upright swings, some have more circular, but at the end of the day, most of them are connected. So this would be a very common error for a lot of slicers, is right away as they turn back, this club is for one working away, so you can see this handle working out over this alignment stick. And then on top of that, this club face, so if we take it back and let's say the toe is kind of our reference point, if this toe, some people believe this toe to be up is good, okay? But if this toe is kind of fanned open and it's pointing like this, that club face is wide open. So right away, you're already in trouble. You're one, disconnected, two, you have a wide open club face. So those would be the two things looking for the takeaway: disconnected and club face open. And from here, you're going to get a whole lot of trouble because everybody knows the golf swing has to get back here somewhere. So it doesn't matter what it looks like here, they just know that at some point the club has to get here. Well, there's certain matchups that are going to cause a lot of trouble.
So when you're watching that there for viewers here at home, we got some great questions coming here on the pivot and the sliding and downswing from Baker and Tony. Thanks for putting those in there. Keep the questions coming. You're thinking ahead, because this is exactly the next thing we're going to talk about. Sam's going to talk about the pivot and the backswing, so keep those questions coming. But you mentioned on the takeaway, what you're talking about here, where do you think they would feel, like we're talking about club head stuff, but are they feeling that, the golfer feeling that more in the handle, or what are they feeling?
So I think it's relative to a lot of people tend to break their wrist right away. So in that situation, I think it's key to get this handle kind of feeling like it's curving in. So you can kind of see that this handle, as I'm turning this hip back, that's part of it, the hip turns, it gets in this space and I can actually feel the handle over the right tongue of my shoe. So that'd be number one. So I think it's a motion of the arms and the wrist kind of simultaneously working together, Todd, for an ideal takeaway. So the handle curves in, and while you're doing that, the right hand is going to kind of support the club. Now I'm really shutting the face here because the reality is most golfers are this. So to make a change in golf, you have to do the exact opposite. So I'm really trying to feel like that face is pointed down to the ground. You can see it. And Todd's going to give a great drill later. That's actually going to make a lot of sense in the field. So again, if the handle's in, and then you can kind of see this club head, the relationship between the handle and the club head is hands are in, club is out. That's a common phrase we use. And if we can kind of see, if I had an alignment stick here, my handle is in and the club is slightly out. So that's going to be kind of if we get the opposite, you can see the handle is out and the club head is in. That's going to be a recipe for disaster.
What Coach Sam gave you right there was real gold, and the phrase I want you to remember right there to kind of tie that all together is handle in, club head out. Handle in, club head out. We're a big believer in kind of these trigger words, and like that to me is something that I tell you, I mean, it works almost every single time, because if you can get that handle arcing in, like Coach Sam just said there, and you get the club head out, you've got most of your bases covered. The face could still be a little out of position or orientation there, but you're going to be really close. I think Sam hit the nail on the head right there with the handle in and the club head out.
Yeah, so, these little keywords like Todd said, I do think that's key for us, because the golf swing, there's so many different thoughts. Who knows, maybe just one thought in the takeaway is all you need to have for your golf swing, but I think on top of the setup, you see how we're kind of stacking things?
Yeah.
You got to have a good setup, you got to have that foundation. The takeaway is the next big piece. Doesn't mean you have to have a perfect takeaway, but it's really going to set up your backswing pivot, which we're going to talk about next.
All right, so let's recap. Let's kind of circle back here right now. Then we're going to start diving into some more stuff here. Coach Sam's going to talk about the pivot. So we talked a little bit about what a slice is. We talked a little bit about what causes it. And that maybe got a little over your head. If you did, that's okay. All right. What we're talking about right now is things you can take to the golf course and do. So gave you some great ideas on the setup. Make sure if you're set up that you're not open or aimed left of the target if you're a right-handed golfer, all right? And then Coach Sam gave you some really good tips there on that takeaway. Make sure the handle works in, the club head works out. We're going to talk about some of the face stuff here in a little bit, but we've probably covered right there probably 70% of the reasons why you're slicing the golf ball. That's where you want to start, all right? But now we want to dive into a little bit of the pivot. We've got some great questions coming here too. Doug just threw in a really good question. Thank you, Doug. We're going to get to that too. But let's talk about the pivot and the backswing.
So you already see, you probably noticed, I put a alignment stick. I'm not just doing this randomly, I promise. So this is a great drill. Again, the same.
This is why we love coaching with Sam, because this guy thinks out of the box. I don't even know where he's going with this right now, so I'm kind of curious.
Help you stay balanced. No. So you got belt loops, so you got it. If you have pants or shorts, this is what works best. So I'll explain this in a second. So I'm just going to lay down this other stick. So the point is kind of pointing, I would say, to like 2 o'clock here. Okay? So the thing that we have to remember is the takeaway is really important, but we got to learn how to, you hear a lot of times rotate the body. And the pivot is kind of the lower part of your body that we talk about, and it's kind of the engine to everything. So a lot of times with golfers, what we see is we don't see any lower body turn, Todd. And, some people are limited, they may not, but a lot of times what we see is people just have never been able to feel that. So there's a couple things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what it should feel like and kind of the feel and your pressure in your feet. And then I'm going to use these sticks as a visual to see how my hips are actually rotating and kind of matching up on these sticks.
Perfect.
So the first thing when we set up, Todd mentioned, again, we talked about this actually last Monday. We want to kind of feel like we have some pressure 55-45 as far as left to right. So that's our setup. So the key for a lot of people with their lower body pivot is we want to get this right hip kind of turning back. So if we do that, that allows this club and us to make a really good turn and get the club back here. Too often we just see people kind of raise their hands up and their lower body is just kind of, there's flex in the knee and there's not much turn. Now this is something that, was taught a long time ago.
You bet.
And I do think now people are realizing that you can actually release that right leg, Todd. So give me a little bit more kind of some history on maybe some of the misconceptions or things that you could do with your pivot.
Yeah, that's a great point there, and I think this is a great lead-in to, for those of you out there right now, if you've heard some things on how to fix the slice, put it in the comments, and I think we could answer those at the end, because lots of times there's some I don't want to say it, but there's some bad information out there. Yeah. So if you're like, hey, I've been slicing the golf ball and my buddy told me to do this, put it in the comments and we'll tell you whether or not we believe that's true or not. So going back to what Coach Sam said there about the pivot, for years, hey, I'm going to raise my hand. I taught this because this is what people taught me. All right? And I'm not, this is the way the world, we know, I always tell people, you make the best decision you can with the information that you have at that time. So during that time, okay, we were taught a lot to keep the right knee, the trail knee, the right knee really flexed, okay, in the backswing to try to create this stretch or this X factor, I don't care what you call it, whatever you want, but to really try to keep that flex. Now, I'll say this, that probably worked pretty well for me when I was in my early 20s, because I was relatively flexible like a lot of young guys, but as you get older, that becomes more challenging. And if you actually look, some of the best players in the world, Sam Snead, Ben Hogan, guys who've been around and gals too, who've been around for years, what you'll see is that in their trail leg, their right knee, okay, for me right, will actually release just a little bit. So I'll tell people, hey, let's say for sake of discussion, you've got 30 degrees of bend in your right knee, just for sake of discussion. At the top of the swing, it's not 0, maybe it's 15. All right, so you go from 30 to maybe 15. So what that does is it allows you to release the hip, as Coach Sam is saying there, allows you to turn the hips therefore more, and allows you to get the club in a deeper position and much better position. So letting the right knee release a little bit, the trail knee release a little bit is a good thing, in my opinion, because it allows you to get the club in a much better spot.
It's a great answer. So again, I see some good players like Brooks Koepka. He doesn't have a lot of release of the knee. But then there's some really good players. I know Rory has a lot of release. And so we're not talking about locking the leg out, but like Todd said, maybe 30 degrees of bend and all of a sudden this right side is turning back, it's going to be like that. So that's just kind of the visual. So now that you understand that, you can kind of see why I have this alignment stick. So as I go back in the backswing, I'm going to try to match up my hip angle with this stick.
Ooh, so you got the stick at what about angle is that?
Yeah, I would say, what is that, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, something
30,
in between
30
there?
to 40 degrees, yeah.
Okay, so when I do that, now you're going to try to match up and try to get this angle matching up with that stick, as opposed to most golfers have kind of this flat angle right here. So the club's going to be more here. If you get turned, all of a sudden, naturally, instead of doing anything with my arms, I naturally get the club behind me like this.
Yeah, and I like how that club's working. It's also working back and behind you there, too. I think that's a really good visual for golfers to have.
And one other thing you can see if someone's helping you, now you see some daylight between my legs. If I didn't have any release of this and work in my backswing pivot, you'd see no daylight between my legs. So the big thing with this is also where you're feeling your pressure in your feet. So if I'm working this right hip back, I need to feel as I'm taking the club away and my takeaway, I'm going from the middle of my foot for my pressure into my right heel pretty early in the takeaway. Yeah. So as I'm doing this, I'm turning, I actually have to make the motion, Todd, and I also have to feel like I'm pushing into that right heel because I'm gaining some, I'm staying connected to the ground.
That's fantastic visual right there. I mean, the pivot is such a big part of the golf swing, but especially for people who are slicing the golf ball. So that's a really good. I'm going to steal that from you now.
You got it. So I'll get out of here with these in my loops here. Let Todd take over.
All right, so we talked a little bit about some setup stuff. We talked a little bit about the takeaway. Coach Sam gave you some really good stuff there on kind of the pivot. Let's talk about the transition. This is where the magic happens. I mean, you see all types of backswings, right? I mean, we have certain beliefs that we think are better than others, better spots to be in. Okay, that's kind of what we're talking about today. But there are a variety of different things. But I'm telling you this, the transition is where it separates, man. I mean, you look at people who are great golfers, their transition, no matter what their backswing looks like, is fantastic. So let's talk about that. And then, like we said here in a little bit, we're going to give you some drills. We got a really great drill. I know somebody asked about sliding and downswing Baker. We're going to get into that. We've got some really great drills about this. We've got the swing step drill, which is fantastic. So, the transition. When we talk about transition, here's how we're going to define it for our conversation here this evening. We're going to talk about when the club changes directions from backswing to forward swing. That's how we'll define it for tonight. We could debate that for hours, but that's how we're going to define it for tonight. Now, typically, if you're slicing the golf ball, that transition move will be outward. Okay, and we've talked about that a little bit. So you're in a good spot at the top or you're in a bad spot, whatever. Okay, but the first move is for the club and the hands to work out and the club head to start to throw, or what we call release early. There's a lot of different phrases that they use. So good spot, handle works out, club head starts to release. Now what we want to actually see is we want the club to actually drop and fall a little bit behind us. And Sam talked a little bit about this the other night when we did some stuff with the driver, and he kind of led into it even a little bit here this evening. So what we want to see is when you're in this good spot, when you transition, the club head actually drops and falls behind you a little bit. Now that's if you want to hit a draw.
Yes.
If you want to hit a slice, you can do the opposite, or like we've talked, there's always mentioned, there are some people who like to hit a little bit of a fade, so their transition might be a little bit different. But what we're saying tonight is that if you slice the golf ball, I'm going to bet dollars to donuts that when you transition, the club head goes out and across. Now, why that is, I think we could debate for hours. I think if you get your setup right, I think if you get your takeaway correct, which of course Sam talked about, and you get a solid pivot, I think it's going to naturally happen. However, there are certain times when people just struggle with the transition, so they have to have some different drills and some things to do it. So the transition, literally, it happens like that. It's like a snap of fingers. So people say, I got to work on my transition. I'm like, man, that's hard. Unless you have a specific drill or something to do. But that's what we want to see in the transition. What else am I missing there?
Yeah, I think right now, if you think of that transition, maybe think of maybe it's a unique or favorite transition that you know. Maybe it's a tour player. Maybe put it in the comments. One that I think of that's very unique is Jim Furyk.
Yeah.
Very unique. I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way, but think of what that club is doing in transition. Have kind of a picture. Put that in the comment box, and maybe in 5 minutes we'll talk about it. Talk about some of those golf swings.
Yeah, I think that, well, I'm going to ask this question right now, and I kind of have my own thoughts. Well, let me answer it first, and I'll get your take on it. I think what causes a lot of transitions to be off, okay, is tension.
Yeah.
Tension in the arms and the hands and things like that, right? And I think we just want to hit the ball. And I think it's, you would see people that they want to go hit the ball, for lack of a better word. And I think that the more you can feel like the ball is going to get in the way of the club, the better off you're going to be. That's why people make practice swings like, oh, my practice swing looks great, and then I put the ball in front of me and I struggle. That's tension related.
I agree with that.
Okay, that's tension related. So a lot of the drills, and a couple of the drills we're going to show you here, we did this drill the other night called 4 equals 3, right? We did 4 swings, hit 3 balls. It's one of my favorite drills. We actually have that in our tour drill program, along with a bunch of other drills that we've got. But I think it's tension related. So one of the feels you might want to have, we're going to talk about a drill to transition in a second, but is to make sure that your arms and your hands feel soft and relaxed when you transition. What do you think about tension in the transition?
I think it all correlates to that. So, on top of tension, the loose or the quick twitch muscles are not going to go. It's going to want to be like upper body. So what I tend to see with poor transitions is their upper body moves because that's how they think they should be able to hit it, and their head gets way in front. So if you're loose, like Todd said, you're going to actually feel like your head is, for most people, actually staying a little bit behind the ball and letting those hands work and the arms swing through the golf instead of trying to control it with a lot of tension.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. All right, so that's a little bit of the transition. What we're going to do now is Coach Sam's going to talk about the finish position. All right, and then we're going to answer questions. We got a question from Tony, Baker, okay, Matt, Doug. We got a lot of questions, and I know there's more out there that the guys haven't even written down already. So let's talk about the finish. Then we're going to answer some questions, and then we're going to get into our drills.
Yeah, perfect. So let's dive into the finish position here. So a lot of times people kind of overlook the finish position, Todd, because the golf ball's gone. But a lot of times there's a lot of good drills. We can get good feedback if we just consider what our finish position is. So we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about where my actual position is with my hands, my body, but also what's important is where's the pressure in my feet, where's my weight. Those are two things that are going to matter. So what we see with a lot of different golfers, especially to slice the golf ball, is we tend to kind of see a finish position where, you know, maybe they're kind of back like this. You can tell that my right heel is actually on the ground, and I'm kind of leaning back like this. Now, this is probably going to tell me that at some point you're trying to get the ball up in the air, Todd.
I would agree with that.
So, you know, one thing that we can do, not to go into all these other areas, is we need to work on a couple different things. We need to work on where our weight is at impact and through the finish position. So at impact, we should feel like we're about anywhere from 75 to 90% of our weight on the left side. And when I finish, a couple things I look for. I look for this right heel to be up off the ground. I want my hips relatively square to my target. And then I actually see for most slicers, I like to see this handle more off of the right pocket. And I like to see the club face right up above it. I don't want to see it like this or like this, kind of right above it. And that's a good spot. You know, you'll see some people that hit really nice draws, like Tommy Fleetwood, and he'll be over here. I think for most golfers that have a finish position, they need to work on a draw, it should be over off the right pocket.
So you want so we want their weight to be forward, be in balance. And I love this reference that you're giving. Maybe even do it facing the camera once there, so they can kind of see it from, that way, or go ahead and do it that way, or even,
So this would be the mistake. There would be a lot of kind of coming back and working back like this through impact, and that would result in kind of this finish. And I'm exaggerating, but there are some golfers out there that will do this.
A lot of them.
Okay. The proper way to do that was, again, if we're doing all the things we should in the downswing and our weight is transferring to the front foot, as I come through, I'll feel nice and balanced. I'll feel on my left side. When I come up, I'm going to feel like my hips have turned towards the target because they're rotating through. This handle should be off a line off of my right pocket. And again, I should be standing pretty tall. I'm not going to be over like this. My arms might have a little bend, but they're out in front of me, and the club head is directly above. It's not off to the side or to the left.
Yeah, the finish tells the story. I mean, if you're not in that finished position, then you got to start working backward and say, okay, why am I not in that particular spot? So that's really good stuff. So, all right, let's dive into some of these questions, and we're going to get into some drills. So keep those questions coming. All right, so where should we got this from Tony? Where should your pressure shift in the Where should you pressure shift in the transition to promote an inside to outswing? Oh, really? I like this guy. I like this question. This is right up my alley.
You want to take it?
Yeah, I'm going to take this one. And I like
take
this one. I thank you for that question. So here's my take on it. Because I really think, and we do a ton of work here on how the feet and the body interacts with the ground. And we're going to do some stuff on that even when we get in some of our research people, when we get on our force plate, we start diving into that. So you want to stick around for that when we put those out there, Tony. But here's my take. I think basically at the top of the backswing, or early in the backswing, the weight should move from the ball of the lead foot towards the heel of the trail foot. So right-handed golfer, ball of the left foot towards the heel of the right foot. Pretty early in the backswing, almost by the point where the lead arm is parallel to the ground. Now, as I start to move towards the top, that pressure, in my opinion, is going to go from the lead heel back towards the ball of the lead foot. So for me, right heel towards the left ball of my left foot. And what I believe is that if you look at that trace of the pressure, which we've looked at many times, that's typically the same direction that you'll see the club swing. And that's what Sam talked about earlier. So if I see a slicer, what do I see? They're on their, if they got a good backswing, they're kind of towards their heel, in my opinion. And instead of it going towards the ball of their lead foot, it goes towards their right toe and then back towards their left heel. And so I believe, you're going to get different opinion if you ask 10 different coaches. You might even get a different one from this guy over here. But it's the movement of that pressure that has the biggest impact on the transition in the direction of the swing. Agree? Disagree? What do you think?
Perfect answer. I think, and if you can visualize going from the ball of the foot to the right heel, again, it's kind of this arc.
Yeah.
And the same thing going back. So you can kind of see as I'm moving this way, now as I come back through, and if I went out to my toe, it'd kind of be like this. So I'll go right heel into the left ball of the foot, and it's kind of working this in to out pass. So I would agree 100%.
So hopefully that answered that. All right, next one we got, can sliding in the downswing cause a slice for Baker? What do you think, Coach? Great question. Thank you, Baker.
Thanks, Baker. Great. Yes, it absolutely can. So a lot of times, what is making you slide in the first place? We always kind of work in the reverse, but what happens is the pivot, again, think lower body, it has different moves. So it does have, you'll hear the common word slide, which is kind of back and through, kind of this way. There's also some rotation in our pivot, and there's also, in most golfers, some extension. So those things together. So what I tend to see with a lot of slicers that might slide is maybe their hips get out in front of them like this, and that actually causes some bad angles with their upper body. So all of a sudden, maybe their left hip slides like this and their upper body tilts, and that's also going to just cause you to be kind of on your back foot, that face is open, you're going to see a peel.
I would agree with that. I think that, you know, I mean, there's a little bit of slide in the transition, but if you're, when somebody says, am I sliding, I think that they're overdoing it.
Yes.
So I think I would go back to what Coach Sam said, there's why are we sliding, what's the need to feel like your body needs to slide. All right, if my club shaft is too stiff, will it cause the ball to slice more? 100%.
Yes.
We talked about this the other night when we did driver fit, when we talked about driver. If your shaft is too whippy, you're going to see certain types of ball flight. If your club shafts are too stiff, you're going to see other types. And so if it's too stiff, you'll typically will see a ball that might start slicing. Also be kind of hard to get in the air.
Yeah, so don't think just left and right, also think the loft or the height of it. That's what Todd brought up the other day. So.
Okay, we got another question here. Keep those questions coming. These are really good. How does, we got Josh is writing over there right now, so we're going to move
How does the grip pressure affect slicing the ball from Doug?
Thank you, Josh. All right, go ahead. What do you think?
So I think for most people that slice the ball, they tend to grip it too hard.
Yes.
Okay, so I do think in general there's certain points in the golf swing, dynamic swing, that the grip pressure is changing, but I don't think that's something you have to be really aware of. You're not going to let go of the golf club. Most people aren't. So if you played some golf, you're going to hold on to it. But I do think the more you can be relaxed in your hands, and we did this the other day, Todd does this all the time. So if I'm really tense, he'll try to move that face and he can't move it. So he'll tell me to relax, and then you can see my forearms are kind of rotating and the face is able to work. So that would be my thing. I think then the quick twitch muscles can work. What would you say, Tom?
I would agree. Yeah, I think grip pressure, you want it to be consistent. I think that's most important. I think when grip pressure changes drastically from light to tight, that's when you get into problems. I would also be aware of, we use the word grip pressure there, but I would also be mostly aware of pressure in your forearms. That's typically where I see too much pressure. I mean, you can grip it too tight, but typically it's pressure in the forearms that's causing some of that. So, all right, so let's do this. Keep those questions coming. Let's go ahead and switch spots here, Coach. We're going to get into some drills, all right? We're getting into some drills. This is part of, for those of you who are still sticking around, this is some of the great stuff that you're going to want to have. Keep those questions coming, because we're going to save some time at the end to also answer those. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel here at US Golf TV. We're not only doing these videos, we got great stuff coming out all the time. We did a product called Tour Draw, which is so literally thousands of them. I mean, I can't tell you how many people it's helped. It's a deep dive into that. And also be sure to follow us at Sanford Power Golf Academy. We're on Instagram and Twitter. You can get to our website. All types of good stuff there. So let's dive into some drills. If you're slicing the golf ball, our 5 best drills that you can do. The first one we're going to start with is on the takeaway. Am I doing this one?
Yes, you got it.
All right, I'm doing this one. All right. So this is a drill. I use this with a lot of different players. We use it with a golf tee, but tonight we're talking about with the logo. So I'm a big Titleist guy. I think Titleist is an awesome brand, and FootJoy is part of that company. So I got my FootJoy logo. This drill is called logo to the ground, logo to the sky. And this works on your face orientation. This is something that Sam talked about a little earlier in the takeaway. So when you're set up, okay, I'm a right-handed golfer. I've got my FootJoy logo. It's just looking at the Sanford Golf sign. When I take it away, I'm going to rotate the FootJoy down towards the ground. When I rotate the FootJoy down towards the ground, you'll notice what it does to the orientation of the club face. All right? We already talked about this, but when people slice it, they rotate the FootJoy towards the sky, club head would get going inside and open. So first step, logo to the ground. Second step to the transition is the reverse, which is logo towards the sky. Now when I get logo towards the sky, in this position right here, that club face is closed. Now, I'm not
Way
saying you
more
can't
square.
slice it from there, but
Sure.
you're gonna have to work to do it, right? So, the drill is logo to the ground, logo to the sky. That will help you get the club face in a much better position, not only in the takeaway, but also towards the top. Am I missing anything there?
I think that is a great drill. So my question, and I heard this earlier, what if you have a different type of grip? I mean, let's say you have a really strong grip. Should you always be focused on feeling that logo, or what else should you be aware of maybe going back?
That's a good question. So what Sam's talking about, there's different grip orientations. So, you can be weak, you can be neutral, you can be strong. We've done a ton of videos on grip positions and things like that. So I think maybe a better way of saying this, I'm actually learning something that Sam just got me to thinking about here, is that maybe what we're talking about is moving towards the ground and moving towards the sky. So because Sam's exactly right. If you have a super strong grip, okay, it's not going to rotate all the way down to the ground, and if it did, the club face would be overdone, right? Okay, so the drill should be actually more renamed, so it should be moving towards the ground and moving towards the sky. Because that's really what you're trying to do there, is get the wrist moving in a particular angle.
So a player that might have a strong grip that actually does that would be maybe a Dustin Johnson.
Dustin Johnson would be a great example of that.
And then if
Absolutely.
someone has like a weak grip, they really have to probably do that, overdo it, right? So
Yeah.
even like a Jordan Spieth or a John Rahm, you kind of see them kind of in that position, but the club face is pretty square.
Absolutely. So it's all about getting those right types of matchups. And so if you're slicing it, you just want to feel like it's working towards the ground and then it's working up towards the sky. All right, so let's have Sam get in here. Let's do the
Baseball drill? Should we
yeah,
do
let's
that?
do the baseball drill. Let's switch
Perfect.
spots. Let's have you do the baseball drill. Hey, keep the questions coming, or if you have a particular drill that's worked well for you, or like I said earlier, maybe somebody's giving you a tip on how to fix a slice that maybe worked or didn't work, put it in there and we'll give you our thoughts on that as well.
So this is really gonna help with two things. It's gonna help with a little bit of your backswing pivot, and it's also gonna help with your club path working in a way, the swing direction in to out to hit a draw. So I've laid two sticks here just for a visual, okay? So looking down the line here, you see this one target, it's going right down the line. So think of a clock, it's at 12 o'clock. We have another one, or second base is another example, or we have the stick also going over to 1 o'clock, or we can think of the right field. So this is gonna help you set up two things. You're gonna work on your club face. So I'm actually gonna set up my feet first. I'm gonna drop my trail foot, okay, and I'm just gonna put it right off of my heel. I'm not too wide, we're just gonna be about a foot apart. And from here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna really make sure that my club face is square to this, over second base. When I go back, again, I'm really gonna focus on turning, and then I'm gonna try to feel like my path, so my path is the swing direction, is swinging out to the right, okay? But this face the whole time should feel like it's pointing down the line. So the face is down second base, but I'm swinging out over right field, and it kind of feels like this. And I've seen this work, I've seen you do this a million times. All of a sudden you see the ball kind of curve over, and it kind of makes sense with the right field.
So we got the base pointed at center field or second base, and we've got our body aimed towards right field for a right-handed golfer.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And what happens here is that gets the club face square to the target line, get your body close, so the club face is very close to the angle of your body. So at first it looks kind of weird to the eye, but what it does is it promotes that inside to out movement pattern along with that square club face. This is one of our favorite drills. What club do you typically do this with?
I mean, I think shorter the better, but anything from 7-iron up, I'd probably do it with like a 9-iron to start.
Yeah.
Just kind of shorter club's going to be easier to actually implement some of these drills.
And what type of shot should they typically be seen with this? Should it be kind of almost a draw to a hook? Or?
Yeah, especially I think anything you can overdo. So if you slice it bad, if you're hooking it for that specific range session, that's that's a check the box, that's a process goal, so absolutely.
Yeah, it goes back to one of the things we were talking about earlier. I don't think that people go from slicing to straight. I think they go from slicing to hooking to straight. If you want to fix your slice, you got to learn to hit a couple hooks.
Yes.
Okay, because you're not going to just, I'm slicing, now I hit it straight. I just don't ever see that happen. You got to learn to hook the ball. All right, let's switch spots. Let's get into a couple other drills here. We got a bunch of great questions coming in there. Keep those coming. All right, so let's talk about, we got a couple ones. I'm going to talk about the swing step drill.
Yes.
All right, this works on the transition. All right, so if you feel like you're off your transition, this is the one for you. Now this is a little more complicated. So you got to work with this a little bit here and bear with it. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take your regular setup. Now I like to do this drill typically with like a 6-iron, okay? But you could actually do it with a driver if you wanted to, but typically 6 or so. What we're going to do is we're going to take my regular setup, okay? And I'm going to bring my lead foot, which is my left foot, back to my trail foot, and I'm going to put the club out in front of me. Okay, so let me go through that again. Setup, bring the lead foot back, put the club in front. Now, when you do that, I'll put this towards the camera here. I want you to make sure that the club face is a little bit closed. Okay, this would be closed. This would be open. I want it a little bit closed. So, the regular setup, lead foot back, club in front with the club face closed a little bit. Now, what you're going to do in one motion is you're going to swing your arms away from the target and you're going to step towards the target. And we've got a question coming up here about what starts the transition, and we're going to dive into that. So, you're speaking our language. So I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and literally just step forward and swing back, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit the ball. I'll try one out.
Let's do it.
Why don't you grab those alignment rods there, Coach, just to show people that you can actually hit a ball doing this. So, regular setup, lead foot back, club in front, I'm going to swing back and step. Were you nervous?
Little bit. I've seen him do it plenty of times. That was a perfect draw.
So what's going to happen there is that's going to allow you to work on that transition and help you understand how the body rotates. So it's a little bit more of an advanced drill. However, working on the transition is a little bit more of an advanced concept that you want to work on. So this drill here called the swing step works fantastic. All right, so let's move into our next drill. Coach, let's talk about lowering and squaring it.
Let's do it. So again, I'm a big believer in giving you visuals, so I'm going to set at least one alignment stick. That's going to allow us to understand the general direction or swing direction we want the club. Then I'm going to have just a stick down the line here. So we talked a lot about the club face being in a certain spot, kind of squaring up instead of opening. So it's really important in the backswing to have the club face square. But a lot of times what we see, Todd, is maybe someone does it pretty good in the backswing, but they tend to open the face up coming down, or maybe they've never had that sense. So this drill is called lower and square. So think of from the transition, okay, so we've turned back, our hands are behind. This club face right now, you can see it's pretty close to matching my wrist angle. So right here is matching this. What I'm going to try to do as I come down, I'm going to try to get the club to kind of be behind me, so lower, and then I'm going to try to get this club face to square, which basically you're going to see this club kind of work in this fashion. So you're going to see how it goes from here, and it's going to start to kind of match my spine angle. So you're going to see as I come down and I start turning, the club is going to kind of lower and square like this. This angle through the golf ball is really going to help you hit solid strikes, and it's going to really eliminate, if the face is open, the tendency is to swing left and square up the face. So the thing that you have to work on when you get up here, same thing that Todd talked about with that logo down and then up to the sky, you're working towards this logo feeling like it's turning down towards the golf ball, and that's a direct relation to this club face kind of lowering and squaring. So the drill that we like to see, again, a little more advanced, but as you go up, the practice swing would be lower and square, about to parallel, you go back, you turn, and then you hit the shot. So as you're doing that, you've lowered and squared it, then you go back and turn, and this club face is already in a really good spot. So I'm not going to hit a golf ball because I think that's a hard one to do off the spot, but that's really helping with squaring the face in the transition.
All right, so let's recap that because Riley was right on top of that. He knew right where we were going. He asked that question, where does the logo point? You say those things again. Everybody pay attention to what he's going to tell you right now. And I want you to say that one more time. When from the top, when they transition, where does the logo point? Where does it go? Because this is real good stuff right here.
If you have a neutral grip, okay, this is for most people that have a neutral grip, but let's consider that. Most people, whether you're here, you have to get this logo to turn down towards the golf ball. So the logo is working towards pointing at the golf ball. Now I'm overdoing it, okay, but if I've always had an open face coming in, I really have to exaggerate. This is a drill you can do at home. You don't even need to hit balls.
No, you don't need to hit balls.
So as you're doing this, again, the club, as you're seeing, is lowering and it's squaring by the logo pointing towards the golf ball.
That's fantastic. Right there, what Coach just told you about. And hopefully, Riley, that answered your question. So, I mean, you don't even need to do it with a golf club. You can be at home, take it back, logo rotates towards the ground, logo rotates towards the sky, logo rotates back towards the ground. And that movement of your wrist angles has a huge impact on the club face right there.
And it's crazy, but even like from this position to here, that little difference makes a huge, you're gonna hit the ball way crisper, way more solid. So, you know, if you have a strong grip, again, I want you to think of where this position should be. Again, working towards this face, kind of matching the spine angle. Okay, same thing if you had a weak grip, okay, you really have to get this wrist or that logo pointing down to the golf ball. So on top of it, just having some awareness of where your club face is coming in the transition.
That's good stuff right there. Okay, let's switch spots again. One more drill. Hey, keep those questions coming. We're gonna sit around here. We're gonna stay as long as we need to get all these questions answered. So keep them coming. Be sure to. We got a lot of great people are slicing the golf ball. We are fixing the slice tonight. All right, so I'm gonna share with you my favorite drill. This is called the TV drill. Long story behind why we call it the TV drill. We don't have time to talk about that, but I had a young lady at our golf academy, and she could slice the ball forever. And she was trying as hard as she possibly could, and we just couldn't get it. And we came up with this drill, and I'll be darned if it didn't work. And ever since then, I use it all the time. So we call it the TV drill. So here's how it works. This is all part of our tour draw program too. This tour draw, or excuse me, this TV drill we're gonna share with you right now. So this has to deal with what we call the butt end of the club. This part is the butt end of the club. We already know this is the club face. So this has to do with the butt end of the club. Really simple. All right. So when you finish your swing, you just want to make sure that the butt end of the club is pointing kind of almost like where Coach Sam is at right now. So notice if I had a line that went through the back, extended out to the butt end of the club, and a laser that went out, it would point right at Sam. So that would be good. That'd be probably a hook, actually, if you did that. Okay, maybe a straight shot. That's going to be a slice. So earlier we were talking about the finish position. And Sam was talking about being forward, being imbalanced, and he was also talking about the direction of the handle. He was kind of leading into this drill. So when you finish, what you're going to do is just simply check where the handle's pointing. If the butt end of the club is pointing out where Coach Sam is at, right there, that would promote a nice high draw. So typically what I'll do, we'll just put a golf ball out there, or their bag, or a tee, it doesn't matter. Some form of object that's probably 2 to 3 feet in front of the ball, 2 to 3 feet outside the ball. And so when they finish the swing, we'll just make sure that the butt end of the club is pointing out there. If they do that, what's going to happen is that you're going to learn to release the golf club. And then also the only way to get the butt end to work that way is for the club head to drop back in behind you. Remember we talked about that. When it drops in behind you and rotates, you're going to hit a nice high draw.
Great drill. I mean, again, all of these 5 drills that we just gave you are going to help. So I know we're running out of time here. We have a few more questions. We'll do a speed round here, Todd. Start asking some of these questions. So let's see what the next one is here. What causes poor timing in the club head releasing?
Okay. Let me switch spots with you here. Why don't you answer that, and I'm going to do mine on that. What do you think?
Okay, so I think, what causes the club to have poor release, or the timing of it, it really has to do a lot with what your transition is like, or what kind of your pivot is like. So I think in general, what causes kind of the transition, and I think this is answering one of the other questions, is I'm a big believer that the lower body is going to kind of start your transition. Okay, the sequence is, the hips, then the arms are going to follow slightly after that. So if your hands are kind of starting the golf swing, which a lot of slicers, usually what's going to happen is you're going to release for several reasons, because you have to get to the ball, or you just don't have the right sequence in your pivot.
All right, let's switch spots. So we're talking about what causes to release the club improperly. So just to first of all describe, this is the power stick. We use this a lot here at the academy. It's got this great formed grip on it. It's got this nice flexible shaft on it, much like the Orange Whip. We use that sometimes. Yeah. That's another great product that we like. And it's got this, I think they call it the magic bullet, magnetic bullet, magic bullet. And so you just swing it, and when you swing it, it pops. And that kind of tells us our transition. As a matter of fact, we did a whole program on this because we liked it so much, called the Power Stick Plus program. Make sure and have our staff put that in there if you guys want to. All right, Nick gave me the thumbs up. They got that in there. So, but we're talking about the transition. And so if your transition is bad, you're going to release it way too early. All right, so I think it's really a combination of all the things that we've really talked about. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go do is if somebody's slicing or they have a bad transition is set up. And then I'm going to go to takeaway. Okay, then I'm going to watch their club face, and then I'm going to look at their transition. And so sometimes you need a simple drill, like we've talked about here. Sometimes you need a training aid that gives you the feedback. That's one of the things I like about the Power Stick, is it gives you it gives you the pop. So you can actually try to feel like you're letting it pop in front of the golf ball. So hopefully that answers it. Sam kind of pretty much hit the highlights there. All right, a couple more here before we wrap up. How can you best control face at impact?
I think it's hard, so I think what I'm getting out of that question is like you're trying to literally control it, which tells me that your face is probably open. So I really do believe if you do some club face drills, especially, I think it's easier to work on your takeaway and get that better before you actually did that lower and square drill. I think that's a little more advanced, but if you get it better in the backswing, it should help square up and you don't have to control your face at impact. It'll just happen.
Yeah, I think that if the moment of impact, much like the transition, like happens like at the snap of a finger, just like that. And so I don't know if you can really control it. You've got to make sure it's in the right spot coming in.
Yes.
You know, you got to kind of dance with who you brought to the dance, per se, right? And so I think that would be a good way to actually feel that drill that Coach Sam gave you about making sure the club face is. Now, sometimes I will work on club face control by having students just hit like little left arm, lead arm parallel to trail arm parallel shots. Take out an 8-iron and just say, okay, let's work on some face control from this spot to this spot. Because if you can learn to master it in that zone, you can probably do all right in a longer spot.
I like that drill.
Okay, we got one other question here. How does the transition change with a more vertical swing like, okay, Justin Thomas versus a flat swing like Ricky Fowler? Okay, this is a trick question. I like this. Thank you, Eric, for throwing that out there. I think this, and I'll be curious to get Sam's answer on that. I think the transition is, I mean, there's multiple ways to do it. And I think we should do a video actually on the power sources. Did we do a video on that, Nick, about the 3 power sources? Okay. All right, so, all right, we got that in the comment. Okay, so we talked about rotation, vertical, and glide. And I think that every golfer has different ways of creating their speed. Okay, now I don't know, I don't have the data on Ricky, so this is just, I'm just guessing, and I don't have the data on Justin Thomas. But my guess is, just visually watching, this is a guess, don't hold me to this, but that Ricky's got a lot of a lot of rotation in his golf swing. Now, is that a byproduct because of the type of swing plane he's got or the angles? I don't know. Or is his swing plane or his angles more because of his pivot? I think it's the chicken and the egg. My guess is with Justin Thomas, it's more, he's definitely got more verticals, more up and down. So I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. I really think it's the combination of how they're creating power, okay, and then their swing, I think, to a certain degree kind of matches that.
Yeah, I think Todd hit it on the head right there, the 3 power sources. I think in general, for people that don't know Justin Thomas, very upright. So at some point, I think most good golfers figure out how to get the club behind them. So Justin Thomas, for him to get the club behind, he's going to have a lot of kind of this side bend to get it here, and that also creates a lot of push off the ground. Where Ricky has the club really laid off here, like Todd said, a lot of rotation through, because that's the only way he can get the club kind of working around his body. If he pushed here, the club would be here. So again, everyone has a different position. The backswing pivot, I think, is a big setup for what the downswing pivot is, and that's really what causes the transition.
Yeah, great question there, Eric. Thank you for throwing that out there. All right, so we've covered a lot of information on the slice. Hopefully you have found this informational. We've given you some great drills. We've helped you understand what a slice is, what causes it. We've got continued great content coming out. We just appreciate you spending the evening with us. And we're going to remind you to be home, be safe, take care of yourself, because we want you to be out on the golf course. And be sure to subscribe. Be sure to follow all of our channels at Sanford Power Golf Academy and at US Golf TV. We're out there everywhere. Please do us a favor, too, and share this with your friends. And be sure to tune in next time, because we're going to have some more great information to help you play better golf.